Okay, we're ready this time. Hey, sorry for the false start. I'd set up something new so that we could have a very special guest tonight. And I don't really need to introduce her. Most of you already know her. But, as you know, Gena, well, maybe you don't, but you're going to find out. As you know, Gena has recently made a trip to Israel. And she would like to, well, we want her to share more about it. So let's, through the magic of electronic media and such, Gena, it's so good to have you. You look fine. Your studio looks fine. And now you recently went to Israel, but this was not your first trip to Israel, was it?
Hey, Mark. So great to be with you. No, that's correct. This was the second trip that I had made in 2018. I went early in 2018, early last year, at the end of January, on a tourist trip. That was my first trip, and most folks watching this live remember that. And I got to know the country a little bit that last trip earlier in the year. But then my most recent trip, the one that I think folks want to hear about, is the one that I took at the end of October into the beginning of November, which was a mission trip, actually. So it was very different from the first one I took.
When you say mission trip, what was the mission?
Well, I had met this lady actually through Facebook, strange as it sounds. I had never met her other than through Facebook, but I became acquainted with her work and became a Facebook friend of hers. And she, about 12 years ago, started a ministry, a 501c3, called Maseh Yadev. It's Hebrew, and don't ask me what it means because I just don't even know. And she headed that ministry for about 10 years, and she left the presidency or the CEO or whatever it is of that ministry to start another one almost 2 years ago. And this one is called Sar Shalom Israel, and that has to do with peace. Shalom. You probably recognize shalom,
Shalom.
Peace.
Which actually means more than the absence of conflict. It means to be at peace.
Yes,
to be like not just welcome, but come in and sit down and enjoy yourself and eat all of, you know.
That's right. That's right. Not a void, but
right.
Space filled with God's peace. So over the years, she took many groups to Israel to basically the purpose of her mission trips are to show the love of Jesus Christ to the Jewish people, and not just the Jewish people, but all the people of Israel. And so in planning for the trip, we collected things like stuffed animals and bathrobes, blankets to go over the top of incubators, nail polish, little things that ladies would enjoy, and I'll explain why as we go on and talk about the trip, but a variety of different things. And when we would get on our bus each morning at the beginning of the trip, there'd hardly be enough room for the 13 of us. There were 13 of us who went because the bus was so filled in the back with all of our stuff. So essentially, we went to Israel to touch base with the people, to touch base more specifically with Christian ministries, and to show them God's love through Jesus Christ.
And how long were you there? I'll give you time.
Sorry. Sometimes when I start talking like this, you know, in a formal setting like this, I get a tickle in my throat. It's so annoying. So I had to have a sip of water.
It's anxiety, Gena. Stage fright. That's what.
No, I'm not frightened at all. I'm not even nervous. But, I mean, because I'm here among friends. And I want to say to those of you in the chat room, if you have a question, I'll glance over to the chat every once in a while. So if you have a question, just jump in and I'll be happy to answer it. And for those of you who may be watching this later, come join us in the patriotjournalists.com chat room. We have a great time here 6 nights a week. We meet and we deal with a variety of topics that are relevant to our culture. So come check it out if you're watching this late.
And we have interesting guests.
That's more interesting than me, for sure. But no, I am flattered y'all want to know about the trip. So we left the States. You fly out of New York, usually, and or Boston, and you leave late at night, right at midnight, and you fly all night. And so I left on October the 25th, and I came back on November the 4th. So I was in country about 9 days.
Okay. Well, I mean, it costs a lot to go over there. You might as well stay a while.
Might as well stay and make it worth your while. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Now, you had brought, let me bring these pictures up so that you all can see some of the things that went on out there. And if you would, Gena, just fill us in on what we're looking at.
Okay, so this is a picture from the city of Jericho, where Joshua fit the battle. And it's not anything like it was in those days, of course, although Jericho has some amazing ruins to explore. This picture is of a private school there in Jericho. It was founded by and it is run by Christians, although they have teachers there who are not only Christians. You can see the lady standing there in front of the refreshment station. What they are doing here is this is a sort of like recess. The children are about to be served a snack. And this school only goes up through 4-year-olds right now, but they're trying to add a grade a year.
Right.
Now, Jericho is in the West Bank section of Israel, and the West Bank is, by and large, it's populated by people of the Muslim faith. And so a lot of Muslim families send their children to this Christian school because they want them to get a good education. And I thought this was a funny factoid about this ministry, which is called, by the way, Seeds of Hope. But a funny factoid about this situation is that they teach, as part of their curriculum, they teach character. And they use the character curriculum that Chick-fil-A puts out. And of course, Chick-fil-A is based in Christianity. It's basically a Christian company, but they're spreading the gospel to people who don't believe. And so Seeds of Hope Ministry is in a similarly hostile environment. So they're trying to teach character traits that Christians ought to demonstrate. And they adapt that curriculum for the culture there in Jericho. And the school has a long waiting list, families wanting to get their kids in, and the school just is having to grow at a pace that it can sustain. Now, the man who started this school is a fascinating character. He wrote a book that I read on my way back home from Israel. The name of the book is Once an Arafat Man. And don't make the mistake my roommate made. When she heard the name of the book, she thought the title was Once an Arab Fat Man. No, it's like Yasser Arafat, okay? Once an Arafat Man. And the guy who started this ministry was born into a Muslim family. He was born near Tel Aviv. And when the country declared its a Jewish state in 1948, his family felt like they should leave. What happened then, I didn't know this, but what happened then is that Muslim families were convinced by their leadership that they should leave Israel when it became a Jewish state. They should leave the country, they should coalesce outside Israel in another Arab country, and then they should go and form these resistance groups and try to retake the country. So that is what this man, his name is Taz Saada, and you can find this book on Amazon, but I know I'm rambling here, but Taz came to America eventually and became a successful restaurateur and became a Christian when he was in his 40s. This Christian man befriended him and just was his friend for these many years. And when the Holy Spirit prompted this wealthy benefactor of Toss's. He shared the gospel with him, and Toss was miraculously saved. So Toss wrote the book Once an Arafat Man. It is a fascinating read. But also there in Jericho, he has a restaurant, a very successful restaurant, and he also has a bottled water distillery, because his property actually encompasses Elijah's well from the Bible.
Hey.
And yeah, so I actually drank bottled water from Elijah's well, which is still a functioning well today. So that was Jericho. That's what we did when we were in the city of Jericho, which was one of our days where we went out and blessed the ministry. And how did we bless Seeds of Hope? Well, our ministry leader, Barry Kay, her name is Barry Kay Seif. I'll type it in the chat room later, so if you want to friend her on Facebook, you can. But Barry Kay had solicited donations for a nice camera. They'd been asking for a camera there at the school, and so we were able to gift them with that. And we had lunch there and heard Toss's personal testimony. It was a great day.
Wow. All right. Who is this?
Okay, so this is a soup kitchen. There is a Messianic Christian congregation in Jerusalem called King of Kings. And King of Kings Christian Fellowship, I think, is its official Facebook name. But King of Kings is a congregation that started in 1988 in Jerusalem. They started meeting in the YMCA there on Sunday nights. And eventually they were able to buy a building that no one else wanted. It was decrepit, to say the least. It had 3 pornography shops in it. And by the grace of God, they were able to purchase that building, which had a movie theater in it. And so they now
I
have
bet it did.
services in a movie theater. I had gone to a service at King of Kings when I was there in January of 18, January of 18. And what a wonderful service it was. Totally sound doctrinally. And they are one of the leading voices for Christianity in Israel, not just in Jerusalem. But they help and they nurture and they support Christian ministries all over the country of Israel. But they have this soup kitchen. And the girl that you see there with the bandana, she is from my home county, but I never met her until this trip. Her name is Rebecca, but she also goes by Rivka, which is Hebrew for Rebecca. Rivka has 9 foster children, 9. And she has a big family. Obviously, she's a stay-at-home mom, but she and her aunt and her cousin were with us on the trip, and all 3 of them are from my home county. And we didn't even know it until we met in the airport. So that was a real God wink there. But we worked at King of Kings Soup Kitchen for several hours, and I was the soup lady in the soup kitchen. I ladled the soup into bowls. I was told I was putting too much soup in the bowls at one point.
Well, if a little's good, bigger is better here
Hey,
in this country. We're not meager. Now, this looks like a relaxing time that you're having. Who's involved here?
Okay, so this, if you notice that the expressions on the faces are somber, I'm over there on the right. You can see my knee and leg, but the expressions on our faces are somber because we are listening to a lady who has, for over 15 years, headed up this ministry in Jerusalem called Bayad Chaim. Chaim is the word for life, and this is a pro-life ministry, and they are badly needed in Israel because, folks, this is something that I did not know until I went to Israel this time. Israel has what you might call universal health care. Now remember, Israel is only about the size of New Jersey. It is not a large country at all, but they have free health care for every citizen. And as part of their health care, abortion is just part of the health care. Mm-hmm. And for however, whatever, I don't know how it came about, but abortion is very, very common in the country of Israel. Back when the country was younger, abortion was so common that 1 out of every 4 Israeli babies was aborted. 25%. Think about that. And now today, it's still 1 out of 6. And you would think, oh, well, that's just the people who don't believe in God. That's just, oh, no, no, brothers and sisters, that is not the case. You have Orthodox Jewish women who seek abortion when they can't afford any more children, for example. And here's the ironic and heartbreaking thing. It wasn't until 2 years ago that the National Health Care paid for contraceptives. They would pay for abortions. Oh, for decades they've paid for abortions. But they would not pay for contraceptives until about 2 years ago.
It's a good investment.
Well, yeah. So they have time. What they do is, if a woman will let them, they will support that woman and her baby for a year after the baby's birth. They will provide diapers. They will provide clothes. They will provide equipment like strollers and car seats and things of that nature. They will support that woman for the first year after her baby is born. They are that dedicated to helping women see their pregnancies through. And you would think, well, why don't they just adopt those babies out? Well, Israel has extremely strict adoption laws. And the crux of them is this: you cannot adopt a child outside your people group. So if a Christian woman puts her, let's say, most of the Christian population in Israel is Catholic, okay? King of Kings is not. It's Protestant evangelical. And there are many other evangelical small groups, pockets of evangelicalism in Israel, but the majority of the Christian population is Catholic. And so let's just say an Arab Catholic young woman decides she wants to adopt out her child. The Israeli government will not let a family adopt that child unless they too are Arab Christian. So it's very constrained. It's hard to adopt a child in Israel.
Very different culture.
Very.
Okay, now here we've got you and a group of 3 men in a little happier scene. What's going on here?
Okay, so here we are at the Garden Tomb, and the Garden Tomb is a place that is very high on most evangelical Christians' lists. But I didn't visit the Garden Tomb on my first visit. I didn't visit it until this second visit because our tour guide the first time around is an Arab Christian. And there are 2 places actually in Jerusalem that are rumored to be where Jesus was where he lay, okay, where he lay in the tomb. This one, the Garden Tomb, is the one that most evangelicals believe was the actual resting place of Jesus's body, or one of the tombs there in the very close vicinity. But the Catholics, many hundreds of years ago, built a church called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it's within the old city walls of Jerusalem. And the Catholics believe that that is where Jesus' body lay. So because my tour guide, the first trip, is Arab Christian, he took to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Until this last trip, we actually got to the Garden Tomb. But there in the Garden Tomb complex, they have this, you can see what is believed to be Golgotha. And there's been erosion over the years so that it looks less like a skull today. But if you look back at pictures even from, say, the 1920s from Golgotha, it looks much more like a skull than it does today. And here's the thing about going to Israel, okay? You have to take things with a grain of salt. I mean, when you visit the Mount of Olives, that is legit. That is legitimately the Mount of Olives, okay? The wall that surrounds the old city of Jerusalem is centuries old. Jerusalem is still on Mount Moriah, okay? But when you go to places like, okay, in the town of Bethany, we went to Bethany one day, and there is a Catholic church built there, and you can visit the tomb of Lazarus, all right? Okay, who knows, really, if that is actually where Lazarus's tomb was, but you just kind of have to roll with it. You know what I mean?
Well, there's actually two of them. Which one? The first one or the second?
The first one, supposedly. The one that he came forth out of. And interestingly enough, you have to go down into the ground to find that. It's like going down into a cellar. You know, when we picture, or at least when I did, the tomb of Lazarus, you picture walking up to a cave, and you would just walk into the cave. Well, maybe in the day of Jesus and Lazarus, you could do that, but, you know, centuries have passed, and so now it's underground. It's really fascinating.
I found this photo rather interesting. There's, well, tell us what.
Okay, so one of our outreaches, one day we went out to this town that, well, let me back up a little bit so that I can scare my mother, who I think is watching this. But there was a man, a Zionist, named Ari Fuld. His name is spelled A-R-I. Was his first name. F-U-L-D was his last name. Ari Fuld. Well, he was I don't want to say an extreme Zionist because that sounds negative. He was an ardent, passionate Zionist. And he was murdered. He was murdered just a few feet from where this picture was taken. We visited the spot where he was, which is sort of had a shrine made to it. But he was very revered by the Zionists, who believe that, you know, Israel is definitely the land of the Jews. Well, this man with the hat on your left in the picture, he is an Israeli soldier. He's a member of the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force. And so we went to this little canteen there in that town, and it's sort of an outpost where the IDF that patrols all over that area, they can come and they can have a free snack or soft drink. And Rebecca, who you saw in the picture at King of Kings, Rebecca is married to a law enforcement officer. So she had made up close to, I think it was over 100 little black drawstring bags, like care packages that our group brought and left there at the canteen for the members of the IDF to pick up. They had new t-shirts, they had socks, they had, you know, just a number of comfort items that members of the IDF could use. And so that was our gift to the members of the IDF when we went to that little outpost town out there and seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Well, so you can tell we had varied experiences. Later on, you'll see the picture at the food bank garden. And here it is. Okay, so here our team was that day. We picked radishes. Okay, we went to the food bank, which is behind us, and I want you to look at the size of those radishes.
They look like potatoes.
They do. They look like beets, don't they? Beets or potatoes. Yes, they were huge. Now, I'm a country girl, and I've grown up working in gardens, and my experience with gardens is that you had to rake, pardon the pun, and claw to get your garden to produce, okay? And if the bugs didn't get it, or the drought didn't get it,
the varmints,
the varmints or the floods didn't get it. I was telling Mark earlier today, we've had flood warnings here for the past 3 or 4 days. Then you might get produce out of your garden, okay? But you would not. I mean, I really thought of that phrase, the land of milk and honey, when we were in this garden. Now this huge agricultural complex, this huge garden, supplies Israel's food bank. it produces food specifically to be donated to the poor, and so that no one goes hungry in the nation of Israel. But I just could not believe how many, I probably, in that 1.5 hours that we worked, I personally probably harvested 500 or more radishes. And it's not because I'm Superwoman. It's because they were just growing so abundantly. It was almost miraculous looking. I mean, it just seemed so obvious, not to stretch a point or to appear overly theological, but it just seemed so obvious that God has blessed that land. The desert is blooming in Israel. It's just phenomenal.
Well, here in our country, I mean, things grow like, well, weeds grow fine.
Yes.
They're healthy no matter what.
Yes. But we have poisoned our soil to such an extent that I'm alarmed at our agricultural prospects for the future. You know, there's the biblical principle of letting the land rest in the seventh year.
Right. That's what Sabbath means.
Yes, exactly. Giving the land a Sabbath rest. And they do that in Israel, and they don't use the copious amounts of pesticide that we use here in America either. So,
well, and they observe a kosher tradition. And by the way, the word sabbatical comes from the idea that on the seventh day you rest.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we probably, those of us who are our age, remember what it was like when everything used to close on Sunday.
I know.
It's that way on the Sabbath.
I remember when Publix used to run television ads that they felt it was important for their employees to have a day of rest, a day off, a day, that they were not open. But of course, that was long before they put profit ahead of people, I guess. Yep. And that's the world we live in today. And what would we do without all those conveniences that we take advantage of?
Well, we survived somehow when we were children, and Sundays were quieter, more peaceful days. And I remember my parents taking a nap on Sunday afternoon, almost every Sunday afternoon. We would go to church. My grandmother would have cooked lunch. We would eat lunch at her table. And then my parents would go home and lie down and take a nap. And Mother didn't slave away at the stove on Sunday night either. It was fend for yourself, okay? We'd make ourselves a sandwich or have a bowl of cereal or scratch and get. Yeah. I mean, that's what it was, scratch and get.
And do so quietly.
Exactly. Okay, so I want you all to pray for this lovely lady here on your screen. Her name is Miriam. Her husband's name is Shlomi. And they have a ministry out in the Rushion et Zion area of Israel, which is near the coast, right on the coast, about an hour north of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is on the coast as well. Beautiful Mediterranean coastline. And Shlomi and Miriam, they have a ministry in which they reach out to Jews. They conduct tours for people who are Jewish, and they share the gospel. They don't hide the fact that they are Jewish and that they are Christian. And the reason I ask you to pray for Miriam is she's my Facebook friend now. And I'll put these ministries in the chat room later. I'll write them down so that you can keep track of them. But when we went to visit Miriam and Shlomi, we had taken bathrobes. And they have a ministry to Holocaust survivors. And I just can't express to you how amazing it was to interact with those Holocaust survivors. They were some of the happiest people you have seen in your life. When we came in, you would have thought that we were war heroes or something. I mean, they cheered, they clapped, they smiled, they practically danced when we came in. They just loved on us. We danced the Hora with them, which is Hora, which is an Israeli dance. We danced the Hora with them. We fellowshipped with them, and they absolutely adored their bathrobes that we had bought them and brought to their little community center there in Rushion et Zion. So please pray for Miriam. She posted on Facebook today that she's suffering badly from bronchitis and she's worried that it's going to turn into pneumonia. But Miriam is a daughter of the American Revolution. Okay, she lived in America. And but she knew that that she wanted to go to Israel. So she was Jewish, and she knew that she wanted to make Aliyah. When the phrase "make Aliyah" means that you go to Israel on a pilgrimage, and you live there. That's what it means to make Aliyah. It basically means to return. Mm-hmm. And so she decided she wanted to go live in Israel. This is when she was a young woman in her 20s. And she met Shlomi, and Miriam was a Christian at the time. She was a Christian, a Jewish Christian. And so she met Shlomi, and Shlomi was this strapping, beefy man in the IDF. And he was actually a guard to the prime minister at the time. And so she met him at one of these IDF mixers or something or other, and they fell in love, and he became a Christian. And so now, well, for many years they worked for Jews for Jesus, but they've since left Jews for Jesus, although they have nothing bad to say about that organization. It's still a wonderful organization, but they have sort of gone out on their own, and so they have their own ministry, and it was a joy to be with them. They gave, it was so touching. They gave each of the members of our group a piece of pottery, and I don't have it down here where we're filming, but it's just a little piece of pottery that one of the Holocaust survivors had made, and I have that on my bookshelf upstairs.
What a treasure.
What a treasure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Are you wearing a Star of David?
I am, yes.
Okay. I know you
bought
can't see it.
Star of David. When I was there in Israel the first time. I bought it from a Muslim jeweler in the old city on the Via Dolorosa, and what a wonderful, happy memory that was. And I've enjoyed wearing it. It has matching earrings. Well, they don't exactly match, but they both have Roman glass, and so that's what that blue stone is in the center. Is Roman glass, which is plentiful along the seashore in Israel. So I wouldn't say it's a precious stone, although they say that it, there's a limited supply of it. One day it'll run out and there'll be no more. And so maybe then it'll be worth more, but it's very precious to me.
It's very special. And our last slide looks like you're having more fun.
Okay, that's us. The thing we're singing, and we're singing and clapping. Just having a good time with them. We haven't gotten to the dancing yet. We got playing but you can see all the Holocaust survivors there. And some of us were standing in the back, some in the front. We just had a delightful time. We also visited, while you're watching that, I'll tell you some of the ministries and things we did. We visited a ministry, again, started by an American who made Aliyah as a young man. Went to live in Jerusalem, and he runs a free dental clinic in Jerusalem, and that's because the national health care does not include dental benefits, and so he runs that facility there in Jerusalem, and he also helps promote adoption. Mm-hmm. So his name is Evan. We visited his place as one of the things that we did, one of the places we went and the things that we did. Some of our group on this trip wanted to be baptized in the Jordan River, but I had already been to the Jordan River on my first trip, and that's an interesting story too, because there are two baptismal sites on the Jordan. One only opened up just a very few years ago. Before that, it was in a war zone. The 7-day war, or 6-day war, excuse me, in 1967, it was surrounded by enemy territory, and there were still undetonated mines. You literally had to drive through a minefield, and today you have to drive through a minefield to get to it. We hope all the mines have been diffused or detonated. Okay. But yeah, that is where the locals get baptized. That is the local non-touristy baptismal site, and that's where our group was going. The other one is, well, the first one is in South Israel, down on the Jordan in the southern part of the country. The other one is in Galilee, and it is much more commercial. It is much more beautiful. It looks like the Garden of Eden around the water of the Jordan, and it's not muddy up there. They've dyed it green.
Oh, for kind of.
Yeah, so it's kind of deceiving, but it is lush and beautiful. So if you want to go to the upper one, you can either have your tour guide find you a minister to baptize you, or you can bring your own, if you travel with a group. Our group had several ordained ministers in it, so other members of our group baptized those who wanted to be baptized. But Lone Wolf here wanted to go visit Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is the World Holocaust Memorial, and it's sort of a museum. It will absolutely slash your heart into pieces. If you've ever been to a Holocaust museum, you know what I mean. But this one is the granddaddy of them all. The first exhibit you run into shows what life was like in Europe before the Holocaust and how rich and beautiful it was. And then you go into the next little room and they talk. The very first thing they hit you with is how the Christian church turned its back on the Jews.
Wow.
And it just slays you. It did me as a Christian. It just slays you. And because it's just the absolute truth. Now, in America's defense, when the Red Cross would go over to Europe during the Holocaust, the Nazis hid what was going on, and
right.
they put on a show.
Right.
It was very deceptive. It was very deceiving. But there was also an element of where America saw what it wanted to see and heard what it wanted to hear, and we could have put a stop to it if we had wanted to, but we just didn't want to. The people in power did not want to get involved in that conflict.
Well, ultimately we did.
We did, but by that time, 6 million Jews had been
right.
killed. So it was just a very heartbreaking thing. But I had wanted to see that museum while I was over there, so I just grabbed a taxi and just went off on my own to see it. And then the last day of the trip, I went to Caesarea, which is a beautiful Caesarea National Park. That was the one day that I toured, tacked on after most of the rest of the group went home. I toured Caesarea and the ruins where Herod built one of his palaces. Another place that I didn't go this trip, but that I went last trip, is Masada. Masada is in the northern part of the country. It's right on the Dead Sea, actually. And the Dead Sea is shrinking. The Dead Sea used to come right up to the base of Masada. Masada is a mesa. It's a high mesa.
Oh yeah.
And you take a cable car up there, or if you're in better shape than I was at the time, you can hike up zillions of steps to get to the top, and then hike back down zillions of steps that have no guardrail, by the way. There's no guardrail, and so if you fall off, you just die. But it's not for the faint of heart. But I took the cable car up and down, and then you can tromp all over the top of Masada and learn about how when Jerusalem fell in 70 AD, that was one of the first parts of Judea to be conquered. Masada was the last battle. It was the scene of the last battle, and people had they thought that they would be safe up there, that the Romans could not get to them, but the Romans eventually did. They built up a side of the mountain so that they could get their armaments up there to the top of that mesa. And the people up there on the top of the mesa, rather than being captured, they all committed suicide.
That's correct. That is the legend.
So,
yep.
That was a sobering place that I visited my first trip. And I'm trying to think if there are other. I mean, I I know I must be forgetting something that we did. We visited lots of hospitals. We probably visited 5 different hospitals while we were there. That included children's wards. It included battered psychiatric wards for women, and we gave those women socks. That's what they say. The people running it say they always need socks because they're not allowed to have shoes because they will hurt themselves or each other with their shoes. So that they all walk around in their socks. We visited just general populations in hospitals, gave out stuffed animals that we had brought with us, told them, you know, Jesus loves you, that sort of thing. And so we visited several hospitals. We also visited a battered women's shelter that is in the West Bank that provides respite and solace for Muslim women, really any women, but it's run by Arab Baptists who live in Ramallah. This area was very close to Ramallah, which you probably recognize as being a very strife-filled place, but they're Baptists from Ramallah, and these women, they come to this place called Al-Waha, and that's what we did with the lipstick and the nail polish. We also gave some nail polish to Miriam Abramov, because she paints nails of the Holocaust survivor women.
Wow.
We visited Al-Waha. We had a terrible time finding that safe house because it's a safe house. Nobody knows where it is, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So it took us a while to find that one. That was pretty interesting. But yeah, that was a blessing to visit with them and share with them and just encourage them. So it was all about encouragement, ministering to others, and we did get a little sightseeing in. The Garden Tomb was a sightseeing thing. The trip to the River Jordan was a sightseeing thing. My trip to Yad Vashem was a sightseeing thing. But the majority of the trip was missions oriented, and it was just a tremendous blessing. I'll tell you, I absolutely love Israel so much. It's the most special place on earth.
It's been quite an emotional roller coaster hearing your account trying to compress 9 days into less than an hour. It must have taken an emotional toll on you and those who were with you as well.
It was rigorous. It was more rigorous than my first trip. It was emotionally rigorous. There were times that we got back on the bus and we were just quiet, I mean, especially after we visited the pro-life center. We were just so crushed in spirit to learn that about this beautiful country, how they're killing their people, like we are here in the United States. I saw a cartoon the other day, which was it was funny, but it was just devastatingly sad. It showed these 2 aliens, and one of them says to the other one, says, "They're killing each other in the womb. Why are they doing that? That is so stupid." And the other one said, "Because some rich white people convinced them it was the thing to do." I mean, it just devastating.
It is. Gena, I don't know. We may have to have you back again. There's too much. I got to process this. I'm going to have to watch this video over and over. And by the way, this live, PJNET Live, is always found on YouTube. And Gena, it is great to hear your account of something we all wish we could do, but we appreciate you sharing your story with us. And folks, there's a big world out there, and it's great to hear stories of how we are welcomed and how we are going there to minister to other people. And you hear so much negative stuff, but it's good to hear Gena's account. Hey folks, tomorrow night we will have Roger with us, and I've also been in contact with Troy Towns, and he may appear also tomorrow night. I've been on the phone today with Wild Bill for America, And Wild Bill, we're having a heck of a time getting hooked up with all the technology. We will go for round 2. But he is eager to be a part of the PJNET family, and as Gena says, that's a big catch. So we look forward to that, and thank you for joining with us tonight here on PJNET Live.